opportunity to provide you with the call-in numbers for Leadership Matters. They are 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas line is 239-645-4500. Questions can also be sent via WhatsApp to 869-661-5683. However, first preference will be given to those who phone into the program. I now call on Prime Minister Harris to present his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Valencia. My fellow citizens and residents, it is a profound privilege for me to have this conversation again with you through the popular Leadership Matters program. This is also a program for our citizens and residents and well-wishers to have their say, to talk to me as Prime Minister of the country in their own language about how together in unity we can deliver the stronger and safer future. This, in my view, is accountability at its best, and there is no higher elevation of good governance than a government that genuinely listens to its people and responds appropriately to their concerns. This program has brought benefits to the people. They get their issues off their chest, one caller told me. They share with the Prime Minister, but most importantly, the Prime Minister tries to help where and when he can. So the farmers who call in because they did not receive the promised support of fencing wire received theirs by alerting me to this program. The caller who had issues with regard to the Social Security $1,000 monthly payout received better information about the processes, and since conversing with Mr. Antonio Maynard, the Director of Social Security, on this program, that person has been sorted, and so too have others been. We shall continue to be a government of and for the people, and of course always a government by the people. We will not take the votes of the electorate for granted, and I pledge personally to do my endeavor best for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I remind my colleagues to serve the people generally, and especially with respect to their constituents, to serve them with sincere humility, love, diligence, and industry. A lot has been accomplished over the last 5 years by my administration, and yet a lot more remains to be done. We still have thousands of families to get their homes, or to add to or renovate their homes. We still have persons wanting to get their first plot of land. We still have more to do to and with our farmers, our fisher folks, and entrepreneurs, and we will continue to work hard for their benefit. Our cabinet must always be disciplined and focused, but so too must the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want our people to feel empowered and enabled to do more for themselves, their families, their communities, and of course our beloved country of St. Kitts and Nevis. My advice to the people, let us build our country. Let us make St. Kitts and Nevis our Garden of Eden. And as we build, let us not allow anyone to tear it down. Let us work together to make it the Garden of Eden that Marcus Garvey way back in 1937 encouraged us to create. Let us share our views in a respectful way, mindful of the diversity of views in the marketplace. In a manner of speaking, there is no single way of doing things, and just maybe there is another way to the one we propose. Tonight I am delighted to have our Attorney General, the Honorable Vincent Byron Jr., and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, two fine citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, two patriots who at the professional level and in their spheres have been working diligently and faithfully to make our beloved St. Kitts and Nevis the best place for people to live, including work, play, and raise their children. And I want to thank them both for their work and for joining me tonight on this edition of Leadership Matters. Our Attorney General, for the record, is a founding member of the Team Unity movement. He has a lot invested in its creation and survival, and he has given yeoman's service to our country in his capacity as Attorney General and Minister with several portfolio responsibilities. I shall remind the public that the efficiency and effectiveness of the Attorney General's office determine how successful a government will be. Even more so for a government that believes in good governance like the Team Unity administration does. And of course we believe in accountability too. Every contract goes to the Office of the Attorney General for input, and there are multiplicity of other matters before they arrive to the cabinet table must be vetted by the Office of the Attorney General. So we in St. Kitts and Nevis, our government, we can be assured, always has and always will operate within the rule of law. It is little wonder then that on the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index, we, the two small islands of St. Kitts and Nevis, rank high always among the top within the OECS, CARICOM, and the wider region. The index is a composite measure of how the rule of law operates in our country in comparison to other countries, and it is based on an assessment of some 8 indicators, namely constraints on government, the absence of corruption in government, open government, fundamental rights, order and security, regulatory framework, civil justice, and criminal justice. We have scored very well on all of those indicators, save perhaps for one. My government has been performing very well, both on the economic front and on the good governance agenda. I will be among the first, however, to note that there is much more work to do, and that is what our second term gives us the opportunity to complete. Electoral reform, for example, has been a matter of ongoing discussions for a very long time. In the second term, we shall confront this. We shall make determinations on whether persons abroad, for example, should be able to vote in our general elections, and the matter of residency, how that should be applied. Within the Team Unity family, we have agreed a position on that matter. We determined that there will be a broader discussion on this subject matter during our second term, and the necessary legislative action will follow, distilling the consensus on this subject. We have to examine who can become citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, and on what terms. Of course, there are several ways internationally accepted by which citizenship is conferred: by birth, by marriage, by residency. In St. Kitts and Nevis, there is a 14-year residency before one is entitled to apply for citizenship. Some persons say that 14 years is too long a period. We will consult with the people and we will address this matter. We shall continue to keep in mind ways in which we can conform the Federation to the highest expectation of our people. Perhaps a comprehensive look is required of our Constitution some 37 years after September 1983. We will engage in our second term in constitutional reform. But the Attorney General will be in the midst of all of these discussions. So let me now therefore invite the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Vincent Byron Jr., to give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. And I want to say a pleasant good evening to everyone viewing this program in TV land. I want to recognize, of course, the distinguished Chief Medical Officer who is here with us this evening, as well as to speak the host, Ms. Valencia Grant, the Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister. While Prime Minister Harris has indicated that I would speak briefly to Team Unity's beginnings and by extension our concern for the way we were governed at that time, as Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, I would want to begin by giving a brief overview where we are in the administration of justice in our country as we look forward to our new term. Some of the accomplishments we have made over the past 5 years have been very impactful, and I think it's necessary for us to see exactly what all we have accomplished over that time. One would recall back in 2015, when we came to office, that there was a significant backlog of cases before the High Court. At that time, we had one resident puisne judge, local judge of the High Court. And when it came to our criminal assizes, in the May assizes that year, we only accomplished 4 of those criminal matters, with some 36 cases having to be put forward to the next assizes. And so it was of deep concern to us that we needed to be able to have, as it was, improvement in the way in which cases before the court were dealt with. And so we were able very quickly to approach the Honorable Chief Justice, who manages the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court and based in St. Lucia. We got her concurrence. We were able to renovate, to construct, as it was, a second High Court chamber, and within 12 months, St. Kitts and Nevis had in its St. Kitts Circuit a second High Court judge dedicated to criminal matters, as we also would have then had a judge dedicated to civil matters. And we have benefited significantly by that, because at this point in time, we manage our caseloads in a very prompt manner, that cases that go before the court are dealt with expeditiously, not only in criminal matters, but also in terms of civil matters, as there is now a dedication of the judiciary to specific areas. We have been able as well to do a number of other things to move forward the manner in which we manage our legal affairs. We have set up and established a new land registry, a dedicated land registry that allows for matters relating to titles, land titles, to be processed much more quickly than they had been in the past. This is critical in terms of economic activity, as people need to approach banks to raise funds. You need to be able to have titles to your land and property, to use them as mortgage instruments so that we can move forward in our development of our country. And so we were able to pass legislation that separated the registry, the registering of documents from the High Court registry. And that has proved a boon, because with the appointment of a new registrar of lands, we have been able in 18 months, the last 18 months, to be able to register more than 4,000 titles in the land registry when it comes to St. Kitts, and some nigh 2,000 titles in Nevis across the land. And so this has been very significant. The land registry itself is one of our main areas that we have been very proud of. Apart from being able to develop, as it was, a process by which we can register much more quickly, we are in the process, as we speak, of digitizing the whole process to make it more efficient and more effective. And one of the things that we are able to do and are doing at the current time is to be able to improve the way in which we identify lands and in St. Kitts. For the first part of this year, we have engaged a company, a US company, to assist us to develop cadastral mapping of all the lands in St. Kitts. We have used drones to have flyovers, and so we are in the process of being able to identify various plots of land to be able to ensure that the whole process of land registration improves significantly. It helps in terms of raising our taxes. It helps in terms of making it more efficient and for people to be able to buy and sell land in a much better way. And we expect that over the course of the next 6 months and into the new year, we would be able to do so. And there are a number of other areas that we are very proud of. In terms of law revision, we have appointed a new law commissioner, former senior magistrate, Mrs. Josephine Malolo Webb, has been appointed as the law reform commissioner. Last year, February, March, she has been in her job for some 12 to 15 months. Since then, we have been able to ensure that all our laws in St. Kitts and Nevis have been properly digitized. They are now online. We have now created a new website where any citizen, any individual, anywhere in the world, can access our laws for no cost at all, and to be able to understand our laws in this new dispensation. And there are a number of other things that we have done over the past 5 years. One of the things that we have been doing is looking at our infrastructure, and we have been able to construct, we're in the process of constructing an annex to the Sirlee Moores Judicial Complex next to the High Court. Residents will see the construction of this new 2-story building that's going up there. And that building will house 3 different departments, or would add to 3 different departments within our administration of justice. There will be a 3rd magistrates court chamber that will be brought into being, and that chamber would assist us in being able to look at such matters as family court matters, traffic court matters, and we would expect that as we move into the 2nd term, we can implement one of the promises we have made before, and that is now to be able to extend the day in having what we would call a night court and allow those who may have to work in the day for non-contentious matters, non-criminal matters, to be able to attend court in the evening after work without having to lose a day's pay, and to improve the efficiency of the magistracy as we move forward. Also in that building, we'll have a mediation center. It's a very important function that allows those who are in litigation in the civil court to be able to go before or work with a mediator to be able to ensure that you settle your matter much more expeditiously than currently. Civil matters litigation can take considerable amount of time, and this allows the court to appoint a mediator and have parties reach an accommodation, settle their matters, save expense, and move forward with their matters much more quickly. We have last year been able to have sessions to train new mediators. Some 25 mediators were trained last year, and there have been ceremonies in which the Honorable Chief Justice and our judiciary have come and added to the experience to be able to ensure as we move forward. This helps our judicial system significantly. And the third department that we will have in that new building will be a new law library. This is something that we have been trying to achieve for some decades, and we will expect that come September, October of this year, when the building is commissioned, that one of the significant features will be a new law library that allows not only practitioners but litigants in person, students, the general public, to be able to access law volumes, to be able to do searches online through that law library system that will be housed in this new annex in the Sully Llewellyn Moore Judicial and Legal Complex. And just across the road from the courthouse, we're in the former CNC building. We have been able, through the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs, to purchase that property that will now be converted to be the home of the new land, of the Land Registry Administration. It will be the home of the Law Commission. It will be home to the Legal Aid and Advice Center. It will be home of the Intellectual Property Office that will be there. And so we will bring various departments of the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs under one house to be able to, on the one hand, save expense for the government, where we have been paying rent in a number of areas, but also to make us more efficient, we feel, and more effective. And so there have been a number of things that we have been doing. We also speak to questions of the abolition of preliminary inquiries, the PIs, when somebody commits a criminal offense. Previously, we would have had to do a preliminary inquiry to see if they should stand trial at the High Court. These have now been abolished to be able to speed up the process by which someone can have their day in court, victims can have resolution to their matters, and this we hope will continue to improve the way in which we dispense justice in our country. There are a number of other things that we want to suggest. I will speak to just one more, and that we hope that by the end, sometime during this month, that the Attorney General's Chambers will be launching its own website to be able to bring information to you, the general public, on what's happening in the courts, in the ministry, and to be able to bring, as it was, to be more open, and so on. And maybe that is a good segue, I would say, into the concept of that has been very much in many of our citizens' minds, and that is the concept of good governance. We speak a lot about good governance. It's been something that has been very important to all of us because it has been one of the pillars on which the Team Unity movement was formed. Some 7 years ago, in 2013, we who were the founding members, many of us were in Parliament on the opposition benches. And we were very concerned, very disturbed by many of the things that were happening in our country. We were concerned in the manner in which the then government was doing their thing. There are a lot of things that people did not know. There are a lot of things that we felt were not proper. And we recall, for instance, in December of 2012, when the motion of no confidence was filed, was tabled, I should say, with the clerk of the House, and the speaker, the then speaker of the House, did not table that matter, did not bring it to the floor of the Parliament for some 26 months. It was of great concern. Members actually had to move the High Court to be able to get some form of resolution for this breach of their rights. It took some time to do, but the court eventually did vindicate those members. In January of 2013, we found that while this motion of no confidence was before the Parliament, or should have been before the Parliament, the government of the day moved legislation to increase the number of senators so as to dilute, as it was, the elected majority who were in the Parliament but who opposed the government at the time. And this matter went before the High Court in February of that year, and that bill that was passed was declared null void and of no effect, unconstitutional. There have been a number of matters that led us to feel there was need for new political culture. But more than anything else, it was that there was a lack of transparency in government, there was a lack of adhering to the rule of law and how we basically should be governed as a people. We would recall that very difficult day on the 15th or the 16th of this January 2015, when the then government moved the Parliament very abruptly, very short notice, or no notice at all, to try and rush through changes to electoral boundaries in our country. This, of course, was challenged, and we recall that we went all the way to the Privy Council, where the Privy Council upheld our concern and placed an injunction on it. There are a number of matters like that that we could point to that showed where we had been frustrated. The people of this country had not been getting, as it was, the type of governance that it needed in a very young democracy. We were, as it was, had to move forward. And Team Unity was formed to help to ensure that these things did not happen again. Of course, we are concerned about the economic issues at the time. There had been, as it was, significant debt in our country. We were in the hands of the IMF. There was, of course, questions of the conduct of the Citizens by Investment program, whereby we had been issued with a FinCEN advisory by the U.S. Treasury Department. And of course, later that same year, 2014, the Canadian government withdrew visa-free status for citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis traveling to Canada. There were a number of areas where we had really fallen short, and team unity was born out of that. And our values that we espouse them then are still relevant today. We had come together and had worked for months to craft the type of movement that we needed to enter the hearts and minds of people in St. Kitts and Nevis. We formed a National Unity Agreement sometime in April, but worked for months before we actually had the final touches and agreed on it. I want briefly just to mention some of the ideas in that national agreement. And for instance, the new unit government, we said, would want to safeguard everyone against the abuse of power in government. We wanted to be able to look at the freedom of information, to get access of information as to how government functioned. We spoke of integrity in public life. We wanted to eradicate corruption in government. We spoke of fixed election dates for national and local elections. We wanted to have term limits for the Prime Minister. And we wanted to be able to establishment of appropriate procedures that are clearly outlined for a vote of no confidence. And further, that we wanted to legislate the proper functioning of the Public Accounts Committee. This basically was what we deemed to be good governance. Some of those, a number of these ideals we have been able to work on, and we have passed legislation. There has been some implementation of them. And the work must continue as we go forward to the next 5 years. But good governance is not just passing legislation. Good governance is much more than that. It really has to do with the way in which the state, the government that has the responsibility for the state, does the right thing. That we follow the rule of law, that in all our dealings, that we serve the people in a way in which we do justice. Questions of corruption, conflicts of interest, and those types of things. We must work every day to ensure that our people can have the confidence and trust in all of us to be able to do so. It is not just one thing that we achieve and so we have done good governance. It's a continuous process of how we serve the people. And that is very, very important for all of us to understand. I will speak later, if I have the chance, in relation to two other areas that I suspect are critical to good governance. That is, how do we ensure that when we choose our leaders to the democratic process, that we have the proper electoral systems? What changes we need to do to improve our electoral system so that we can continue to have this belief in true democracy with free and fair elections. One component of that, of course, is having proper boundaries that are balanced, that are well drawn, and that there is no confusion. Before I end my opening statement, I want to end by speaking to a convention that our country has been a signatory to, and which overpins a lot, or underpins a lot of what we do when it comes to the question of good governance. And that is the convention, the Inter-American Convention against anti-corruption, on anti-corruption. that members of the Organization of American States signed and which we are party to. 2004, St. Kitts and Nevis, in August 2004, St. Kitts and Nevis signed this anti-corruption convention. And in 2010, we signed a further agreement known as MESISIC. That is where we joined the Committee of Experts. It's a process by which every 4 years there is an evaluation of the various members, mutual evaluation by other member states. St. Kitts and Nevis has gone through 2 of those evaluations and have produced, as it was, the basis for which some of the questions on good governance are based. So, for instance, when we speak about procurement of goods and services by the government, this is a convention by which we are reviewed. And we can speak to questions of tendering, the way in which, for instance, our road network, our $69 million road network, has been done, and we are consistently, throughout the period that this has undergone, we have had open tendering systems at various villages openings, where people, it has been transparent in front of people. Question of procurement, a critical area in which we want to be able to ensure that we continue to do good governance. There are other areas about how we hire public servants, how the public servants service is conducted. And so there are a number of features of good governance that we have to be able to meet and ensure that our people do and conduct all time. And I just want to ensure everyone that our government, the Team Unity movement, is very proud of the fact that we have made significant strides in terms of this good governance agenda, that we have been recognized as being one of the leaders in the rule of law in the Caribbean region. We are #1 in the OECS last year, just 1 spot in the index behind Barbados. Barbados, I think, was 29. I think we were 30th or 20th and 29th. And this is talking about worldwide out of 150 countries or more. We have been governing well. We are proud of what we have done, not only in terms of our economic management, the management of our economic affairs, financial affairs, but also in the way in which we have been able to govern our people. And with those few words, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Valencia.
Thank you very much, Honorable Attorney General. We'll take a quick commercial break, but just before we do, I'd like to give you the numbers to phone again. They are 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the overseas line is 239-645-4500. Please be brief so that we can accommodate as many questions as we can. When we come back, we'll hear the opening remarks of the Chief Medical Officer. Then we will take your calls and questions.
Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands. Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands and touching your face with unclean hands. If you have to cough or sneeze, do so into your flexed elbow or a paper towel and then dispose of it. Keep a distance of 3 feet away from anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. Boost your immune system with vitamins, drink plenty of water, and get adequate rest. Visit your doctor, the nearest hospital, or health center if you or a family member becomes ill. A message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
There will be fresh sums invested in the popular Fresh Start program to assist the poor
and marginalized youths by providing access to capital to fund small and medium-sized business projects. $5 million will be provided in this regard.
One UN estimate put it that each year about 13 million tons of plastic is dumped into the oceans. And it is estimated that by the year 2050, we'll have more plastic than fish in our oceans. And so that kind of statistic is not sustainable at all for our environment. And so we have to do something. And that is why on World Environment Day, it is a people.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. We'll hear from the Chief Medical Officer now, and then we'll go straight into your calls and questions.
Thank you, Valencia Grant, and a pleasant good evening to my fellow panelists, Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable remarks. I've been asked to provide you an update regarding the COVID-19 outbreak globally, regionally, and locally. And then I'm going to share with you some details regarding the return of the Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine students tomorrow. The World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic on March 11, 2020, almost 4 months ago. We are all deeply concerned about the alarming levels of the spread globally. As of today, there are over 11 million cases and over 500,000 deaths. CNN and the Johns Hopkins University Center for Systems, Science and Engineering are monitoring the COVID-19 cases in the United States of America. There are almost 3 million confirmed cases in the US and over 130,000 deaths. To date, there are 62,325 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in 33 countries and territories in the Caribbean region. And these figures are as of July the 6th, 2020. There are 1,303 persons who have died. In terms of good news, 26,875 cases have recovered in the Caribbean region. However, please note that these numbers do not give the whole picture because many mild and asymptomatic cases go undiagnosed and uncounted. The situation report released by the Caribbean Public Health Agency dated July 6, 2020 stated, and I quote, "The risk of further cases occurring in the Caribbean remains very high." It is with this backdrop I provide you an update as to the local situation. On Saturday, July the 4th, the Ministry of Health announced the 16th case of COVID-19, some 76 days after we would have announced the 15th case. The patient is a returning national who landed from a hotspot in the United States. The patient was placed in quarantine for 14 days and was tested. The patient is now in isolation and is receiving medical care. At present, we have 38 returning nationals in quarantine and awaiting testing. Based on the latest iteration of the emergency powers regulations, it is evident that the phased lifting of in-country restrictions continue. The Ministry of Health continues active surveillance, whereby we continue to test all suspected cases of COVID-19. There is also continued implementation of COVID-19 prevention measures, which include the wearing of face masks while in public, hand hygiene, which remains the best defense against the coronavirus, physical and social distancing. These non-pharmaceutical measures will help to reduce the risk of our exposure to the virus. The COVID-19 virus is relentless, and we should not let our guard down. So now let's just speak to the return of the Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine students. The Ministry of Health and the COVID-19 Task Force are collaborating with the Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine to facilitate the return of the 7th semester students. Approximately 138 students are expected to arrive on island via charter tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday, July 8, 2020. The task force held a series of meetings with key personnel from the International University to ensure that all established protocols are followed in the process. The task force also participated in a virtual meeting with all the students who were appraised of the steps involved in their return trip. The students have consented to serial testing, which really means or involves a pre-arrival molecular COVID-19 test in Miami, a similar test done upon arrival in St. Kitts, and another test done on day 14 of quarantine. The samples taken in St. Kitts will be processed at the Next Generation Laboratory. The students will be quarantined at the 5 residential halls or dormitory buildings located on the Ross campus. The residential halls on the RUSVM campus will be guarded by members of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force, and members from the security team at the RUSVM. The students with negative RT-PCR test results will be officially discharged from quarantine and allowed to integrate into our society. This is actually the first batch of students, and we will tweak this process accordingly. The return of these students also provides an appropriate test for our human resource capacity, laboratory capacity, and the structures that are in place to prepare for the reopening of our borders. The return of the students is vital for the economy. The COVID-19 Task Force and the Ministry of Health endeavor to strike a balance between the appropriate public health measures, facilitation of economic activity, and the maintenance of mental health and emotional well-being for our people. According to Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, technical lead at the World Health Organization, I quote, "The fundamentals of public health have proven successful to containment of the COVID-19 outbreak." She cited some of these measures, specifically mentioning activating emergency mechanisms, taking it seriously from the start, repurposing government officials to tackle the virus, testing, quarantine, case and contact finding and tracing, mobilizing the population to protect themselves, and practicing basic hygiene, end of quote. These are the measures we have employed here in the Federation and have been successful in managing the first wave of infections. We have an individual and collective responsibility to continue practicing these measures. It was Dr. Michael Ryan of WHO who once said, "We need to learn the lessons that are being shown from this virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws. We have some phone calls, so let's go straight to the phone lines.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Austin Coker, and I'm directing my question to the AG. Mr. AG, good evening. My question to you. Since 2015, Pilot Judge Hall Finkit at Aberrance. Is there a case against him? One, and if there's a case, why is it staying so long to come forward? That's one. Number two, there were many things that you all decided to put in place for the first term. I don't know if it is your fault as the AG or the complete government, but I think that you all are dragging your feet on too much of things. They need to be brought forward as quick as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll take the next call.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Timothy Sylvester Surplus Harris, and the table there, and the whole world who are listening to this program. Now, Dr. Harris, I want to commend you for leading your government with leadership matters, because I was listening to BBC News as usual, and when I heard this news, I said, wow, St. is doing great. So I want to commend you for the way your government has been handling the COVID-19 situation. When a big country gonna be calling on a small country like St. News and give them that recognition, it tells you all that that is good governance and good leadership that matters. Now my question to the Attorney General. Mr. Attorney General, since we had the election there, the first election, Dr. Douglas said he went down government headquarters 4 o'clock one morning and he took out what he want. And he know that they will never find what they're looking for. I would like to ask the question, did you all inquire what he take up? Because I think that government building and what is in government building is government property. And is there a case can be held against him for doing that? For the sake of time, I will listen out here. Thank you for taking my call. Have a good night. May God bless the whole table.
You're welcome, sir. Same to you. Go ahead, please. We'll take the next call.
Good night to the Honorable Prime Minister. And good night to the panelists there, Mr. Byron and Ms. Ross. Good night. Now, my question to you, Mr. Prime Minister, that you know under the COVID-19, when with the light bill and the water bill and so, right? This is a 3 months. We have 3 months, I think over 3 or 6 months. The water bill stuff that will revamp. But a lot of people complaining and say that when they go pay the water bill, they're still paying this not enough. Nobody telling them nothing but things. So I just want to know if somebody is sabotaging and doing what they're supposed to do. Because I get complaints from several people, you know, in my village all around, because you know I'm a man all about the place. So I wanted to look into it very seriously, because 3 months off, I believe that all who get affected by that supposed to get 3 months off. And the next thing again, now with the COVID-19 situation and those people out there, like in Europe and in Canada, pension from out there, who don't work hard out there, and they're back home here, you know, resting. Now, some of them got a problem getting the check, you know, the pension from overseas, especially from Canada. And I got a good auntie of mine, out there, she was to work here, and over 6 months now, she says she won't get a job. And now you're a caring Prime Minister, and you get things done to the ordinary man and woman in the country. So my question to you is, when you anything about the Canadian government or whatsoever, to go to this paper check here. Because the money is saved in the country and it's spent in the country. Some people might start a negative thing because people are more out there working and all kind of thing. But I know that you, the Prime Minister, you're on the bar with the people of this country and you will get it done. You all have a wonderful life, God bless. And continue to do the good work of the people of the Federation of Kings with me.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll go to the next caller, please. Good night.
Good night. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good night. I must say congratulations to Team Unity Government and also the Honorable Prime Minister to lead our country, to the Honorable Attorney General and our great lady CMO, Dr. Lord. Honorable Prime Minister, I have a suggestion. People who want to travel and therefore the airlines and the cruise ship industries must make it possible for those people who want to come to our country to have certification of COVID-19 negative. The airline industry and the cruise ship industry should make it mandatory for those people to bring to the fore before they board that they will be traveling to St. Kitts, Nevis, as the case might be, and as a result of that certification, when they come, we test to see if they are in fact COVID negative. We do need tourists back to our country, and therefore we have to figure out how we can put things in place to open up our country. And with the certification, which would be mandated by our government, allowing those certification or that requirement be part of communication to the cruise ship and the airline industry, I believe we would be able to bring people back to our shores and we will be able to reopen our country more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, caller. Next caller? No? Okay, we don't. Okay. Mr. Attorney General, you have a number of questions directed your way, so I'll ask you to address them first, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Valencia. And I understand that Mr. Coker has raised a question as to the matter involving Mr. George. Mr. George was the former supervisor of elections, and in 2015, viewers would recall that there had been a disruption in the conduct of the delivery of the results of that election, and it was egregious. The matter was put before the Director of Public Prosecutions, and there was a charge leveled at Mr. George. It first went before the Magistrates Court. There was an appeal that went before the Court of Appeal, the High Court first, I think it was, and then the Court of Appeal. The matter is still standing, it is still pending, and we await for the court to table the matter to bring it forward. It has not been withdrawn, but there has been legal challenges to it, and it is making its way through the court system. And we expect Mr. George to have his day in court and the matter be resolved before the tribunal. I think Mr. Coker has also spoke to a number of things that need to be brought forward. He has not really itemized them, but we have done significant number of things, as I mentioned earlier. There are, I think, one of the most significant ones that we speak to is the question of boundary changes. And there, you would recall that prior to the election, since last October, I think it was, Boundaries Commission had been appointed. They had been doing their work, and then the COVID-19 disrupted their work, and so we have not been able to conclude that. It is the intention of this government to have the Governor General appoint a new commission that will require 2 members to be appointed by the government from the government benches in Parliament, and 2 members to be appointed by the opposition benches in Parliament to be able to have a commission activated. The Governor General would then, in his own deliberate judgment, having spoken with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, would appoint a chairman. And we expect that over the next few weeks, next couple of months, that such a commission would be activated to continue the work that had begun in the earlier part of this year. It has been a long time since we have had any boundary changes, and we would recall that there were some delays in the counting of ballots. One of the factors that we can point to is that in one of the constituencies is significantly larger than many of the others. There may be other factors, but there is a need for us to have equal numbers of inhabitants in each constituency to be able to make a more democratic, a more fair distribution of voters when it comes to selecting the representatives to our parliament. So that's one of the things that will have to be done. There have been questions in relation to electoral changes. How do we discuss, as it was, in our country, what should happen to who should be eligible to vote? The Honorable Prime Minister mentioned it earlier, that this is going to be a discussion in the country that will be initiated by our cabinet, and we'll move forward to have that resolved shortly. These are some of the things I believe that Mr. Kokamenti did not really identify them, but I would pause on that. In relation to Mr. Culture, he wanted to know if we knew what Dr. Douglas was doing in government headquarters in the wee hours of the day after the last election. What I would say is that we have discovered that Mr. Douglas did not collect everything he may have come for, because some of his personal belongings were to be found in his offices when we moved into government headquarters. These were collected and were stored for some time. I can't say what exactly has happened to them at this point in time. If there were other stuff that may have been the property of the government, we have yet to identify any of that stuff. But what I would say is that he did leave quite a bit of his own belongings and personal effects that were in government headquarters. He more than likely did not expect to lose the elections and have to move on, but so be it.
Thank you very much, Honorable AG. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have 3 callers on hold, so we'll go straight to them. Good night.
Good night.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes?
You, go ahead.
Okay, good night, panelists. I just have a question and a comment. Some months ago, there was a discussion or proposal to introduce a national health scheme. Is that still current? Second, in terms of term limits for the Prime Minister, I tend to prefer 3 terms than 2. But wouldn't it be better for the Prime Minister to put it to the people to see what they prefer? And if there is going to be, or if we should ever introduce term limit for government tenure, wouldn't that come into conflict with vote of confidence or vote of no confidence? Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, caller.
Yeah, hello.
So go ahead, please.
Yeah, good night, good night. This is Thomas Richards. I would like to ask the Prime Minister if I can see him one-on-one. I have something to speak, but not over the radio.
Yes, you can, and we'll make those arrangements.
Okay, thank you, sir. Just tell me, you know my number, just call me and let me know.
Okay, sir.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks.
Mr. Richards. It was Mr. Richards who phoned last week as well about the issue in Newton Road, and the Public Works Department is looking at a solution for that. I spoke with Mr. Cromwell Williams today, and so you will be seeing some improvement soon. Good night, caller. You're on the air.
Good night. Good night to the palace. Good night to our Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris. Timothy Harris, I see you just enroll, and I use the word enroll, a new young lady into government by the name of Miss Nisbet, and I see you are looking for young people. So which means that Team Unity is continuing to have a good structure of young people and mature people into government, so you can continue to do the work. So congrats to that, and congrats to her. My question is to Dr. Laws, CMO, who is doing a wonderful job. School should be expected to be open sometime in September. How are you going to cope with having the students sitting and ensuring that they wear masks? It may not be, you may be able to answer all, but maybe you could shed some light on the plans that the education department have with your decision that the task force will make to the school about what they should do if they're going to have an additional class where they're going to have like a quarantine room. You know, if you're going to have somebody who's going to actually clean the school, will like train them. Like, just...
Hello? Okay, we have one more caller on the line. Good night. Go ahead, please.
Hello, good night.
Good night. Go ahead, please. We can hear you. Okay, we lost that caller. Okay, I will turn to the Chief Medical Officer to answer that question about the reopening strategy for schools, and then we'll go to the Prime Minister, who had a couple of questions directed to him. So, Chief Medical Officer, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The COVID-19 task force, the Ministry of Health, continues to collaborate with the Ministry of Education with respect to the opening of schools. So we are aware that the fifth formers were allowed to come in to complete their school-based assessments. The CAPE students were allowed to come in already. And at present, we are collaborating with the early childhood sector, this sector is preparing to open. Now, in terms of the opening of the other, sections of school, in terms of the primary school, secondary school, this is slated for September 7th. Now, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, they are looking at what's happening around the globe, and they are trying to pull the best practices. And so, in a very short order, they will be sharing with the public the methodology that will be utilized in terms of opening in September. But the principles remain the same, and that would include the wearing of face masks, hand sanitization, a proper sanitization program within the classroom and within the school sector, physical and social distancing. And so more information will be provided to the public as the date draws closer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the Prime Minister.
Except perhaps I want to address the question regarding the certification of one being COVID-19 as one of the elements to assist or facilitate travel.
Question. Yes. As we consider the reopening of our borders, the Federation will have to make a determination as to what processes will be in place for incoming travelers, air travelers and sea travelers. And that should involve a pre-arrival test, COVID-19 test, meaning the gold standard, that's the molecular RT-PCR test, a test upon arrival, and then a determination would have to be made in terms of will there be serial testing. I gather from the Ministry of Tourism that majority of our tourists, they spend 3 to 5 days. Their stay is usually 3 to 5 days. Well, we know at present our protocol speaks to 14 days, so that's longer. So if you have the pre-arrival test and the test upon arrival, we may determine to test the individual maybe at day 2 or day 3, because the science tells us that if you do a second test while in country, you would be reducing the risk of reimportation or reintroduction of the virus into your federation. And so as a federation, we are going to have to make a determination as to what level of risk, what compromise will we make in terms of what level of risk we will allow in terms of allowing tourists back and allowing them to reintegrate into the society with or before the completion of a 14-day quarantine. Because once you do that, there's an attendant risk, and we need to determine what level of risk we will, choose.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would want to add that we are this week at the level of the OECS and at the level of the heads of government going to be looking at the matter of the opening of the borders. It is a very important issue, but it is also a very complex one. And it is certainly not just a question of opening up the borders. It is a question, as the Chief Medical Officer says, that within jurisdictions and across the region, we have to determine what risks we are prepared to take. And that is a matter which the science should guide us, and the experience of other countries should also help us in arriving at where we want to go. This week we are going to have a discussion on this one, and certainly will be in a better position to make a judgment call, not a rush judgment, but a reasoned judgment as to the best approach on this matter. That meeting, I am advised, will take place on Thursday of this week. And in my conversation with the Dr. Didicus Jules at the OECS Secretariat, he said this matter is very fluid. I believe fluid because of all of the risks attendant to this one, and the fact that we do not yet know all that we need to do regarding this virus, and of course the danger of the second wave. And the second wave can be more devastating than the first one. So it is a matter in which we want to keep ourselves advised about, and the NEOC and the Chief Medical Officer and the health professionals should in fact provide us updated guidance in this matter as the knowledge, the science, and the experience evolves. I want the health practitioners to know that while the government, like the rest of the society, wants more of the economy to open, we want it to be done in the safest possible way. With respect to the National Health Coverage Program, I can advise that it is still a priority for this government to ensure that regardless of the income status or the working status of an individual, should he or she become ill, that person will be able to afford the care and treatment required, and our national health insurance coverage will facilitate that particular reality. It is one of our priority as part of our program of delivering the safer and stronger future. Safer from harm is a critical component of the approach for this year. And so we will build this out shortly. Significant work has been done. Consultations have been happening with several of the key stakeholders and will continue as we fine-tune our approach and with respect to the National Health Coverage Program. We would also, on the matter of term limits, the caller raised the issue whether the public should have a say on this, and that is an interesting intervention we are having. We have expressed in our manifesto a commitment to 2 terms with respect to the person serving in the office of the Prime Minister. But we are speaking to good governance, and good governance does in fact provide for the citizen to have an opportunity to air their views. The matter of whether or not this conflicts with the motion of no confidence, I would say I think not. But again, as things evolve, we will see how that goes. The motion of no confidence has been part of the Westminster model of parliamentary democracy, and it allows persons wanting to test the cohesion, the strength, the ability of a government to continue to do so via a motion of no confidence. Once a motion of no confidence succeeds within the context of our constitutional umbrella, it is expected that the Prime Minister will, within 3 days, notify the Governor General of whether he will resign, he or she will resign, or he will go into a general elections, which should be called within 90 days. And of course, in St. Kitts and Nevis, as part of our good governance agenda, we have removed the ambiguity with respect to the time frame within which the motion of no confidence had to be tabled and debated, so that never again in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis should the people have to carry the burden of a motion of no confidence being held in abeyance for 26-month period. The caller who required the meeting, we will attempt to arrange for that. I want to thank Bucky for his always insightful interventions. The one on the school is an important one. Again, always how we are going to ensure the safety of the people within our jurisdiction. And it's a matter which requires an all-of-society approach. And so it is not just a burden to be carried by the health practitioners, by the teachers, but we want the parents and every significant adult to be part of the preparation of students to re-enter into schools. Give them advice, give them encouragement, give them support, and show them that it can be done by your own example. Your own example of the practice of personal hygiene, your own example of the wearing of the mask, even wearing it inside of the home, so that the children can see parents and adults doing that, and therefore would want to continue that tradition which is being developing. So we want each of us to do the very best we can today, to enforce the health protocols which have been so important to us in containing the spread of the virus. And lastly, Bucky raised the matter of today we had the swearing in of a young lady from Sadler's Lavington as a new senator in the parliament, and what it says about the government policy towards young people. That we are a government which understands that the young people is at the heart of our future build-out. that the young people must bring their talents, their energies to bear now in helping to advance the country in the very difficult task of nation building in a small state. And it was by the fact that we were so impressed by all we envisaged that the young people can bring to nation building. And we were impressed particularly by the advice, the support, the guidance which young people brought to the launch and the maintenance of our virtual campaign, that we pledge that we will begin to coordinate, harmonize, ignite more of that potential through the establishment of a ministry of entertainment, a ministry of talent development and entrepreneurship. All three are interrelated. And we have started that work. We have given that new exciting job to Minister, the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet. And we are hoping that by year-end, the particular programs and policies will be well articulated and ready to receive budgetary consideration, because we want our young people to always be futuristic in their outlook, hopeful in their outlook, and to possess always a spirit that they can. That is what Bernie Sears' nomination represents for the country. That Team Unity continues to be inspired by the goodness and the excellence in our young people. That Team Unity recognizes, of course, the importance for succession planning. And these young people who are now part of the expanded realm of the executive will bring new ideas that keep the spirit of Team Unity alive, that allow the Team Unity government to ensure that the agenda of a safer and stronger future is one realized, but importantly realized for all the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you very much. On that note, I'd like to remind the public that the first sitting of the National Assembly in the second term administration of Prime Minister Harris will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's going to be held at the St. Kitts Marriott, and you can tune in live to ZIZ on all of its platforms, radio, TV, social media, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't miss that. It's going to be very exciting. But we're going to take a commercial break. We'll come back. Let me give you the numbers to call in again. The call-in numbers are 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the overseas line is 239-645-4500. We'll take a quick commercial break and we'll be back.
Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands and touching your face with unclean hands. If you have to cough or sneeze, do so into your flexed elbow or a paper towel and then dispose of it. Keep a distance of 3 feet away from anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. Boost your immune system with vitamins, drink plenty of water, and get adequate rest. Visit your doctor, the nearest hospital, or health center if you or a family member becomes ill. A message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
There will be fresh sums invested in the popular Fresh Start program to assist the poor and marginalized youths by providing access to capital to fund small and medium-sized business projects. $5 million will be provided in this regard.
One UN estimate put it that each year about 13 million tons of plastic is dumped into the oceans. And it is estimated that by the year 2050, we'll have more plastic than fish in our oceans. And so that kind of statistic is not sustainable at all for our environment. And so we have to do something. And that is why on World Environment Day, it is a People's Day where we have to do something about protecting and conserving our local environment.
CFBC are observing World Environment Day that's coming on this year, that's coming on the 5th of June under the UN theme of beating plastic pollution. On pollution of the environment, we cover broadly three areas or three types of pollution. One is land-based, air-based and water-based pollution. In all of those areas, plastic pollution is a problem, where plastic pollution can overwhelm our landfill and other areas where they accumulate as point sources. We also have where much of the plastic, once we have heavy rainfall, will make their way into the sea. And when the plastic is burnt, we get air pollution coming from plastic.
Give us an environmental studies assessment of what you see here.
Okay, over here you see some plastic waste that has washed up from the ocean. This can be hazardous, as if it's located on the beach, it shows that there's a lot more in the ocean because, as I said, it is washed up.
Mangrove swamp.
Good evening. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. We have more calls, so we're going straight to the phone lines. Good night, caller.
Good night. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good night to everybody. And to you, my best, wonderful Prime Minister in the Caribbean. Good leadership really matters. Look, you look good on my TV and for a job well done in the past. And look forward to a brighter future. You handled the corona very good with the CMO and others. Even they say nothing was there. We have to be very careful. We see on the TV a busman almost lose his life for people not wearing their masks. I'm asking these busmen here, please to be careful. And if anybody don't want to follow the protocol, don't blame you for nothing. Congratulations on your second term. To Timothy, grace, mercy, and peace to you. Let not the foot of pride come against you, and let not the wicked remove you. Taste and see that the Lord is good to all you all. God bless you. You pay 8,000 people. That's a lot of money. You did not have to do it. Not even 10 people called to tell you thanks. Stay strong. We're out here for you. When the CMO ready, they will direct you. Don't let nobody rush you. Take your time. It will come. This hurricane will be like a corona. To Mr. Byron, 3 years ago you say house to house and did not do nothing. I hope this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another caller. Go ahead, please.
Good night to everyone. Good night, Prime Minister.
Good night, you're on here.
Good night, yeah. I can't hear you all too good, but you all hear me good?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good night, Prime Minister, good night to everyone. Prime Minister, how are you tonight?
Very good, thanks.
Okay, I just want to tell you, keep up the good work moving forward, good governance. And I hear lady say, and I'm ready today, she cannot stand you, but I just want to tell you that Jesus loves you, and I do to this is Miss Unity, and the second word, when they say coming, I will like art with you that word. We don't own sickness. Sickness belongs to the devil. God promised us death, not sickness. So rebuke the word and put the it. We own something good, not sickness. And that's all I have to say. Good night, Prime Minister, and keep up the good works. Okay, moving forward, good governance. No matter what the circumstances may be, God working it out. Bye. Have a safe journey home to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, caller. You're live. We have another call.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I think that people are confused between bill deferment and bill cancellation. And I think that confusion may be creating some problems with persons paying maybe their water bill or the electricity bill. So if that can be examined and clarified, I think the people will have a better understanding as to what transpired during the 3 months. My question is, what is the difference between Mr. Ian Patch's Library election petition and the SKNLP election petition? This may be a question for, of course, Honorable Byron. And let me say lastly that Team Unity is doing an excellent job. And I say, keep the dream alive, Team Unity 2025. God bless. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you. Good night. Do we have another caller?
Hello.
Go ahead, please.
I'm concerned about commuting on the transportation, the public transportation, and people are not wearing their masks. I don't know if we're going to put police to see these being enforced, but since we're having another COVID case, this needs to be enforced.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Actually, a couple of persons raised the matter of people not wearing their masks on public transit, bus drivers and passengers. Actually, this aligns with a WhatsApp question we got in. So I'd like to direct that question to the Chief Medical Officer, if she'd like to answer, as well as the Attorney General.
Okay, thank you, Valencia. In responding to this question, I want to refer the persons who posed the question and the listeners to the Emergency Powers Regulations, Section 16, subsection 8, which clearly states that if you are using the public transportation, the bus particularly, you must wear a face mask. The windows should remain open, and all persons shall practice good hand hygiene. And so really, you should be asked to sanitize your hands upon entering the bus and when you exit the bus. And persons who are not in compliance with this, I want to refer them to Section 19 of the Emergency Powers Regulations, which states that a person who contravenes or fails to comply with these regulations shall be liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $5,000 or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 6 months or to both, and to a forfeiture of any goods or money in respect of which the offense has been committed. So that's the penalty. However, I think it's our individual and collective responsibility to adhere to these measures. The wearing of the mask is going to protect you as an individual and reduce your risk of exposure to the virus, and the persons who are sitting beside you on the bus. And so it's the responsibility of the bus driver and the passengers to ensure that their peers on the bus are in compliance with the Emergency Powers Regulations. So I think we have an individual and collective responsibility to adhere to these measures, because these are the measures that are going to protect us from this virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the latest emergency powers COVID-19 regulations that Dr. Laws referred to, they were published on June 26th in Extraordinary Gazette number 49 of 2020. They're referred to as SRO number 27 of 2020. You can find them on www.sknis.kn. I will also ensure that ZIZ posts number 27 of 2020 or number 10. It's also referred to as number 10 Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations. ZIZ will post it on Facebook, and SKNS will post it on Facebook tonight and tomorrow morning. So when you go online, you can get a copy if you don't have a copy already. Thank you very much. We had a question directed at the Prime Minister, directed to the Prime Minister about election petition. A gentleman wanted to know what's the difference between a couple of petitions, Mr. Prime Minister.
Well, I'll let the AG answer that one, but very quickly in relation to the call that came earlier regarding the confusion over the water bills. There were two commitments which we made as part of the stimulus package. The stimulus package was primarily intended and targeted to bring some easement to those persons who had become victim of the COVID-19 consequences upon their workplace. Hotel workers, persons in the manufacturing sector, the persons down at the ferry terminal, just to name some. And what we said for 3 months in the first instance, April, May, and June, there will be no payment by those particular individuals impacted. No payment for April, May, and June. Now, if you receive bills and you are quote-unquote a victim of the COVID-19, we will advise that you take that back to the water department and you have a conversation with the persons there regarding the payment. Any payment that had been enforced, which ought not to be, will be reversed. So April, May, and June, for those who would have lost their job or suffered significant loss in income as a consequence of the COVID, we have said that we will waive, that is, you will make no payment with respect to that. We have also indicated that respect to farmers, that they too will benefit from a waiver with regard to the payment of the water bills. And that was because we wanted to assist in helping the farmers to help us be better at food security, the production, etc., of critical items. And so victims of COVID-19 certainly were intended to and shall enjoy the concession, the support by way of the waiver of the water bill that we had promised. With respect to Skelec, what was promised was that there will be a deferral with respect to the payment. So again, for the period outlined, there will be no payment required during those particular months, but at the end of that period, the payments will begin to take effect. So we bring you an easement in the same way. The banks, for example, said, we will not collect mortgages for a 6 months period of time. At the end of that 6 months, the payment then begin to take effect. And there can always be a payment plan with respect to those. Our word is our bond, and we will provide the assistance needed. The system may take a little while to bring the kind of support that has already been determined, but it will be effected for the benefit of the people. I just want to add, in the context of national security, that the police has a duty to help in the implementation of the SRNOs. The police had already begun the process of stopping buses and ensuring that the regulations are being upheld. If we are seeing an uptick in non-compliance, certainly the Commissioner of Police will reassign manpower to ensure that persons do not neglect their obligation while they are on public transportation. And so we will try to do what is necessary. But yet again, the principle at play is an all of society approach, which means those who know better must do better, and the operators of buses must ensure that they do not let anyone on their bus who refuses to wear the mask.
Thank you very much. Also, the SRO number 27 of 2020 is available on www.covid19.gov.kn. So that's another website you can access the SRO on. You can also access it on zizonline.com. As you may be aware by now, ZIZ Online has a COVID-19 portal. So you can go to that portal, and then there's a category that says statutory rules and orders. You can access it there. Okay, thank you. So we have the question directed at the Attorney General about the election petitions, sir.
Thank you very much, Valencia. The question was, what is the distinction between the election petition filed by Ian Patches Libud and those filed by the candidates for the Labour Party? In terms of Ian Patches Libud, he filed an election petition against Jeffrey Hanley and against, as one of the defendants, and so too the returning officer. You would recall that Ian Patches Libud would have lost that election by 24 votes. That was the returning officer submitted that count, and there were 98 ballots that were rejected. Ian Patches Libud is dissatisfied that of those 98 ballots rejected, that he may have had a majority of them were for him. And so he is challenging that return given by the returning officer. As the 6 losing candidates for the Labour Party, they have filed petitions. In their cases, they claim that there were irregularities, what they call corrupt practices on behalf not just of officials of the were conducting elections, but also by government officials. And one claim is that land was distributed to citizens in order to get votes, and there's a distinction as to whether that itself was a corrupt practice. Calling it bribery was one of the bases of that. And the second basis for some of the challenges in terms of the losing Labour candidates were questions of voter registration. There were some voter registration issues that they would like the court to adjudicate. I should state that all of these election petitions will have an initial hearing on a Friday of this week. So in a few days, there should be an initial hearing in all of these election petitions before the court. Thank you.
To a couple of WhatsApp questions. The first one is, it says, is Dr. Douglas paying back the country his salary as the court deemed him illegal from 2015? I'll have the Prime Minister and the Attorney General answer that. And also, someone would like to know, it says this question is for the Prime Minister, will the $1,000 continue to help the hotel workers like how the border is still closed?
With respect to the paying back of his salary for that period of time in which he acted in the Parliament, while in fact he was an imposter. That matter was discussed at the Cabinet this week, and the Cabinet determined that we shall have legal advice on that subject matter to determine what further action needs to be taken, if any, to remedy that, as it were, particular behavior, which meant thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars were paid to Denzel Douglas when he was not properly a member of the Parliament, and we shall seek advice on that, and then we will be in a better position to more frontally address that particular matter. With respect to the $1,000, again, when we announced the stimulus package in the last week of March, the 24th or 25th of March, we did say that the period of time would be 3 months in the first instance. The 3-month period would have ended in June. The Financial Secretary has been tasked with the job of collaborating with the Social Security Board to make determinations and to advise Cabinet by Monday on what would be the next step going forward. We note, however, that a significant number of persons are now back on the job. In the manufacturing sector, some 75% of the employees are now fully engaged. One of the largest factories, Jaro, anticipates that by October, almost all of its workers, 300 on its payroll, would be back out. I want to commend all the manufacturers and the NEOC for the strong level of collaboration and cooperation which facilitated the return to the workplace of those employees so that they can earn their own keep, and they can do so in a very safe way. So we are happy that the employers made the necessary investment, enhanced the sanitation that was available, took action to ensure that the social distancing could occur, took action in terms of reorganizing lunch period, lunch times, the number of persons who could be around having lunch at the same time, all with a view to preserving the health of the workers. We want to say a hearty thank you. And we note that at Harrow Server in Sandy Point, the plant has continued to function. Early in the year, we had the sad news that one of the plants would have closed by May. As a result of negotiation with the U.S. government and with the management of that company, that plant is now in operation and should continue to be operating until the latter part of the year. So we are still continuing discussions to see whether the good fortune could continue even on a more permanent basis, and we are waiting the outcome of those discussions. With more persons going out to work, less persons should be on the list requiring the $1,000 assistance or any other form of assistance. We make appeal again to persons because several persons are duplicating their request for assistance and attempting to get the assistance from multiple channels, therefore defeating the equity which we want to have, where those in need, and only those in need, should make application for these resources. So again, we appeal to the fairness within people, we appeal to the discipline within our people, and we appeal to their compassionate side, and we ask them to do the right thing. That has been one of the causes for the delays in some processing, because persons were making multiple applications to the scheme, and in ways which were not helpful to the processing process.
Thank you. I'll ask the Attorney General to weigh in on the question relating to Dr. Douglas, if he'd like. And then we'll go straight into the wrap-up. So we'll have the closing remarks by the Chief Medical Officer, the Attorney General, and then the Prime Minister.
That's a question related to...
Yeah, it says, is Dr. Douglas paying back the country his salary as the court deemed him illegal from 2015? Would you like to weigh in on that, sir?
I think that what we heard was that the Prime Minister indicated that on Cabinet of this week, there was a discussion in which we are to seek legal advice from senior counsel who would be able to advise us properly as we move forward on that matter.
I'll invite the Chief Medical Officer to give brief closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. As we said earlier, we now have the 16th case. It's an active case, and it's important for the general public to be reminded of the prevention measures, the wearing of the face masks in public, and as many of the callers would have said, on public transportation, the buses, it's very, very important for us to be mindful of this, because the mask protects other persons from you, and it protects you from the other person. It really reduces your risk of exposure to the virus. Hand hygiene, very important. As I keep saying, it's the best defense against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Physical distancing, ensure you remain at least 3 feet north, south, east, west from individuals around you. Social distancing, try and avoid mass gatherings, crowds, large crowds. These are the measures, these are the non-pharmaceutical measures that are going to reduce your risk of exposure to the virus. Thank you.
And I'd like to remind the public that we now have 1 confirmed active case of COVID-19. So prior to Saturday, our 15th confirmed case was announced more than 2 months ago on April 19th. Our previous 15 cases have seen full recoveries. So that's important to note. Sir, Attorney General, I'll invite you to deliver your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Valencia. I just want to assure all our viewers that the government is committed to do the right thing. We have shown that over the last 5 years that we have been able to maintain a robust presence in terms of making our laws amenable to suit our circumstances, that we have followed them strictly, that we will continue to move forward to implement the type of ideals that we established when we started as a team unity movement back earlier, a few years ago. We abide by the rule of law, and we want all our citizens to do so, but we as a government will ensure that we follow the law in everything that we do. We will be working assiduously to continue to work to implement those pieces of legislation that help to buttress this concept of good governance. Integrity in Public Life legislation was passed some years ago, and we operationalized it. Currently, we have in place Integrity in Public Life Commission. We have in place an office that requires public servants, our senior public servants, and all our politicians, all the members of the cabinet, to be able to work soon to prepare and present their assets and liabilities to that commission. We expect that over the next few weeks that a date will be set for us to make those declarations so that they can work to begin to monitor whether it is that we are adhering to our oath to work for the people and not in any way to abuse our trust in them. Other types of legislation that we will be reintroducing shortly in terms of our good governance legislation. You have heard of term limits. This will be soon on our agenda again, as well as we work to ensure that we have changes in our electoral system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Attorney General, Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Press Secretary. I want to begin by saying a word of thank you. Thank you to the other two panelists, the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Vincent Byron, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Lodge, for joining me on this forum tonight and adding value in terms of the information that they were able to share and the confidence that they would have been able to add to with respect to the standing of our health care, our ability to deal with the challenges, and our success so far in combating COVID-19. I want, of course, to say that we continue every day to uphold our strong belief in the good governance agenda, and this program is part of delivery of good governance to the people. And I must, of course, thank the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, because when faced with a choice between the future and the past, they chose Team Unity and its promise of the stronger and safer future for the general elections of June 5th. And again, from the bottom of my heart, the greatest thank you. It leads me in large measure to reflect upon the vexatious nature of the petitions filed by the losing Labour Party, a party that has put in its worst showing since 1952 or thereabout, and a party that continues to lack leadership. The general elections just ended reflected that, contrary to what the propagandists of the Labour Party had put forward, the country believed in Team Unity. And that is why Team Unity now holds 9 out of 11 seats in the federal parliament. Team Unity received a swing of about 5% in the popular votes. We won constituencies 3, a seat that Labour had never lost hitherto, with a swing to the Honourable Akila Byron Nisbet of nigh 7%. We won constituency number 2, which was held by Labour 25 years hitherto, with a swing of about 5.1% to your Honourable John L. Powell. The CCM hold all 3 seats in Nevis, and in my own constituency, a debt of gratitude to the people. They returned me with 1,870 votes versus 607 for the opponents, a lead of 1,263 votes in St. Christopher 7, the largest absolute margin in any constituency. In constituency number 6, there was a swing against the incumbent, in that Labour Party stronghold of around 14%. And Denzel Douglas would have lost 1,000 voters from the last general elections. The Labour Party in this election managed 10,455 votes compared to Team's Unity 15,298 votes. Since 2010, the Labour Party has lost 2,000 voters. This has been Labour's worst percentage vote and record. What those statistics reveal is that the great party that Bratcher and Southwell and their successors presided over has lost faith with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and need to go through an urgent process of rebuilding. The elections petitions reflect that the Labour Party is not in sync with the vast majority of people. And the Labour Party continues to lose its credibility by that kind of behavior. No succession planning, year after year, defeat after defeat, the same old response of scapegoating. So again, that is a tragedy for the country and for democracy, because political parties are at the fulcrum of a vibrant political process. We hope good sense will prevail. But to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, we certainly do appreciate your choice. And having given me the chance to continue to lead this country as the Prime Minister, I can only pledge and reaffirm my commitment to do the very best I can always, not some of the time, all of the time, to advance the cause of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. So thanks again for your support for Team Unity. Team Unity ignited passions everywhere. Several persons who were voting for the first time chose Team Unity because Team Unity as an idea, as a concept, had meaning, had value, had relevance, and had a record. Every constituency benefited from the presence of the Team Unity movement. And it was interesting last Sunday to hear the Deputy Prime Minister, who holds perhaps the strongest PAM seat in the Federation, reflected on the tremendous support that the PLP unit and the general body politic brought to the enhancement of his victory there. What can be said for 5 can be said of all 9 seats which are under the banner of Team Unity. Team Unity brought added value because this is what the people always wanted. Way back when politicians were fearful of enjoining the team, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis were ready for that. And the polls which were conducted in 2014, 2015 consistently reflected that the vast majority of people in St. Kitts and Nevis wanted a Team Unity administration. Indeed, at one point, the support for Team Unity across the country was as high as 70%. That is significant. That has been the winning formula. And it was the value system that Team Unity brought to the fore. The idea that good governance could happen. The idea that we can bring shared prosperity. The idea that we can bring significant improvements in the lives of Kittitians and Nevisians. And we could bring a sense of calm in the relationship between the federal entity and the Nevis Island administration. How good it is that 5 years after, every leader, every premier, Vance Amory, Mark Brantley, every member of that administration, as can every citizen say, the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis is at its best. The challenge is to maintain it. The challenge is to maintain the cohesion. The challenge is one of discipline. And the challenge is one of focused leadership in maintaining the strength of the government and being a people-centered government. I am certain, with the help of the cabinet colleagues, with the prayers of so many in St. Kitts, in Nevis, and around the world, the team Unity will deliver this safer and stronger future which we have promised to our beloved people of St. Kitts and Nevis. To God we give all glory, and I thank all who have tuned in this tonight. And thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. On behalf of all of you, our large and dedicated audience, I say a very special thanks to the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, and the Chief Medical Officer. On behalf of all of us, we thank everyone listening and watching for making Leadership Matters appointment television, as well as such a huge success on radio and online. Leadership Matters can also be accessed on ZIZ's Facebook and YouTube pages, as you know, ZIZ's Amazon Fire Stick app, and the ZIZ News app, available online at the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. Be sure to tune in to ZIZ tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you again for spending your Tuesday night with us. Good night.
Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands and touching your face with unclean hands. If you have to cough